This episode of Gamerheads is brought to you by Magic Mind, the healthy energy drink that will help you take your creativity to a new level.
Hi, I'm Celia Schilling from Yacht Club Games.
Hey, this is James from Megacat Studios.
Hey, this is Matt, aka Stormageddon, from Reignite, Screen Snark, and the Fun and Games podcast.
This is Stephanie from the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network.
Hey, this is Mark and Keon from Bonte Avond.
Hey, this is Sebastian with the ProNerdReport.com and the Single Player Experience podcast.
Hi, this is Chris.
Mike.
And Garrett from Daylight Basement Studio.
Hey, this is Baron J67 from Level 1 Gaming.
Hey, this is Todd Mitchell from Code Right Play.
Salutations, this is Mike Carroll from Stroll Art.
Hey, this is Jeff Moonen from Fun and Games Podcast.
Hey, this is Patrick from the Backlog Odyssey.
Hey, this is Rune from Runic Codes.
Hi, this is Andrew from Spalato Bros.
Hi everyone, Jill Grote here from the Indie Informer.
Hey, this is Brimstone, and you're listening to Roger Reichart on the Gamerheads Podcast.
And welcome to another episode of the Gamerheads Podcast. My name is Roger. This week, I have a very special guest. I have Lee Williams. He is a game developer and writer, and one of the creative minds behind the game Cryptmaster, and the voice of the Cryptmaster, as we talked before recording here. Lee, thank you so much for joining me this week.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Well, before we get into the game, because I have a lot of questions about the game, and I really love this game. But tell us about yourself. How did you get into gaming and your whole journey into the world of gaming?
I think my journey into games, working in games, is probably not a very common one and not an optimal route. I wouldn't say that, because I did lots of other careers first.
Okay.
I was a labourer, a linesman for the electricity board, security guard, night security guard. Then I had a whole career in teaching. I did that for many years, special education. So I was a teacher in a Senko, and through all that, though, I'd always written. I used to write short stories mostly, and I'd have short stories published from time to time. And that was just a kind of hobby, and that turned into writing bits and pieces for games as more or less a sideline. And then, to cut a long story short, it got to the point where I could make it a full career from it. So I did that relatively recently, just before the first lockdown. I think I moved full time,
really
working in games. So I had credits in games before that for a few years, sure. Just bits and pieces of writing. And I'd made my own games. I used to make games for game jams and things. Again, just on the side, just as a hobby, really. And it got to the point where I was getting enough work that I thought, well, I can make a full time career of it. So I did that a few years ago. Wow. And then we put all our energies into making Cryptmaster, that's the first big game that I've made like that.
Wow, that to me is like, because Cryptmaster is so amazing, and we'll go into that in a little bit here. But this game is so complicated and so intricate, and for you to tackle this as like your first like big game on your own, like, is shocking to me. Like, but I love it. You guys did such a fantastic job.
Paul, I should mention as well, Paul, who is amazing, and Paul did all the coding and the art for the game, and we kind of collaboratively did the design. Paul's got heaps of experience, and he's just a very talented person. I don't like praising him too much. This will be the last time I praise him during this interview. But he's extremely talented, and so he was able to shoulder an awful lot of that. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, that's funny. Well, before we get into like the questions that I have, can you give us a little bit of what Cryptmaster is for those that may have not played the game before?
So Cryptmaster is I think the term I used for it originally was it's a word-based dungeon crawling puzzle RPG, which is a very clumsy way of putting it, but it's hard to compare it to a lot of other things. When some of the Steam reviews, a lot of the time people say, "Oh, it's like Typing of the Dead meets." Those are kind of a bit reductive, I think, sometimes, because there are a lot of different systems in it that some of them almost shouldn't work together, but I think we've managed to get to bash them bash them into shape. But it's basically a fusion of a lot of different genres. So it's a word-based game, and the fundamental thing behind it for us was that we didn't see it as a typing game, as in it's not about testing the speed of your typing or that sort of thing, but it's word-based in the sense that we wanted all your interactions with the game world to be through words. So whether they're typed or spoken, but a single word input at a time, we wanted that as the control method. So that was the kind of heart of the game, if you like, that we would have that system in place, and then the game itself kind of spirals out from there. And once we realized we wanted words as the central mechanic, you start thinking of all sorts of other things. You've got Wheel of Fortune, crosswords, riddles, anagrams. So all of the other mechanisms of the game, it's within the framework of a dungeon crawler, but everything is kind of to do with words. That's such a, it's so hard to do like an elevator pitch or something for Cryptmaster. Every time somebody asks me that question, I do what I just did then, and I would just waffle. I don't really know. I'm still not sure how to describe it. I'd have to, if I got stuck in an elevator and I had to pitch that to somebody, I'd have to break the elevator somehow or something and trap us in there for a while.
But I think like what you said there really describes it well, because it is such a unique game. It's not anything I've ever played before, and that's why like I was so attracted to this game. And even in my review, I talk about how even after playing the game and just like or walking away from the game because I have to do other things, I'm constantly thinking about the game, and I'm constantly thinking about like, how did they do this? What about this? How do can I try this word? What happens here? It's so, I love this game so much. It's so fantastic.
Thank you.
So part of the game that I really like about this game is the concept of, like you said, it's this traditional dungeon crawler with typing of words as your primary mechanic. Like, what inspired that? How did you come up with that idea?
It was very again, I'd like to have a neat answer that encapsulates, it came to us in one go and it was this, but it was quite a gradual process, I think. It was one of the advantages of working like the way Paul and I do as a very small team, and we just sort of bounce back and forth. And it started, if you like, I'll tell you how the game began, which was as a game about pirates, completely different. A game about pirates.
Really?
And you were going to be on a pirate ship, and you would have a pistol, and you would interact with everything by shooting it. And that was the first game we started working on, the first proper prototype we were making. And then we realized you would have other pirates coming up to talk to you, to ask you things about controlling the ship. And we realized it was also fun, not only shooting them, shooting their hat off, shooting things, but you could, if you shot the words, because they would have speech bubbles, and we thought, that's quite fun. You could shoot the word out of somebody's speech bubble to make their sentence different, or to make decisions in that way. And so we had a whole system whereby you were changing the meaning of things by shooting words out of things, which was really interesting, but it wasn't fun. If I'm honest, it wasn't an awful lot of fun to play, and we couldn't really make it fun. But we really liked the idea of doing something with words like that. So then we started going down that route, and for a while we had something where you could pick words from the environment and then reuse them. So there would be you would have a scene where there's a description up top telling you about a battle between two pirate ships, and you might already have collected from another description the words big, small, wet, something like that, and you could start swapping the words around in descriptions. So kind of scribble naughty sort of thing. That we persisted with that for a while. We realized that pirates now wasn't the right setting. I don't know why we've still got pirates in the game, but it seemed to fit the idea of a dungeon crawler, because then you could use words like, you could take the word rusty off a gate and put it on somebody's sword, and you'd have a rusty sword. And so we had combining adjectives and nouns, and then really it just like little step by little step turned into what it is now.
Wow. And with that, then with the weapons, that also a part of that, what were some of the challenges when you're trying to implement? So part of the game is that when you learn something new, you're talking to the Cryptmaster, and he like talks through like the word and says, "Oh, I'm looking at something," and you have to guess what that word is. And once you get the word, then you get letters for the words, and then you can then guess some of the words you have, and those become your weapons or your techniques. What were some of the challenges implementing that mechanic?
It took a lot of balancing. Once we'd finally arrived at that mechanic and that core gameplay loop, for a long time that was all we had. We didn't have a lot of the other things, riddles and so on. So we just had the chess. You get letters from chess. The letters go into your words. You guess the words. That was the core loop, and that took. It took a fair bit of balancing, especially the words, because obviously the point is that the length of the words that you use is important, because that determines how many souls. For a long time, though, funny enough, we didn't have souls.
Oh, really?
In the game. So the difficulty was simply that a longer word would take you longer, would be harder to remember, and would take you longer to type. So actually, one of the first iterations, I think we did put more emphasis on typing speed. We were thinking in it, it's just so a harder word is longer, but it actually doesn't. You could, if when you're typing, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference whether a word's got 5 letters or 7 letters when you're typing it always. So it didn't really work that. So then when we introduced souls, I remember that was a wonderful moment there. It just all clicked together. But yeah, so there was a lot of balance involved, certainly, in making that mechanic work. The Cryptmaster, the 20 questions thing with the chests, where you ask him to do things to the item, that was I think it was a stroke of luck that worked as a mini game. Originally, if I remember rightly, we were going to do that as more or less. It was just going to be like one or two little comic moments. We just thought it was funny. It's funny. You can get him to smell things and this and that. You can tell him to do stupid things.
Taste it.
So we thought that would be a nice little comic moment. But then we actually realised, this works quite well as a little mini game within itself. We could probably repeat this through the game.
Yeah. I love that. And it's like one of my favorite things, because you really can make the Cryptmaster do some weird things like smash it, taste it, eat it. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? And the responses are they're spot on. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I'm so impressed. Everything I've done in the game so far has gotten a response, whether it be snarky, at some points, right, where the Cryptmaster is like, why would you say that, right? But even like I think I typed in the word crap at one point, and the Cryptmaster kind of yelled at me for that.
He'll come up and you off, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that mechanic and thinking through like the player's choices, because it really feels like you had a lot of thought behind what some of the words could be. And I'm assuming that you see some analytics on the back end now that people have been playing it and putting in, guesses, because like there's a lot of times where I was just guessing words and really the Cryptmaster is like, I don't even know what that means. What is that? What does that word mean? Can you talk about mechanic? And then the second part of that question, are there if you see the analytics, what were some of the more surprising guesses that people have put in there for words or words that they've used?
We don't actually have use analytics in it at the moment.
Oh, okay.
We did during some early rounds of testing, but I've checked with Paul. I don't believe we do at the moment. But what we do a lot actually is watch people play it on streams.
Okay,
because it's always and I have. I mean, I don't think there'll be a camera, will there, later? But no, for the record, I'm holding up a piece of paper with just lots of tiny spidery writing on which, when I watch streams, I'm constantly noting down things. They use this word. I need to add it, because we've got big pools of words. So all these words are synonyms for whatever. Even now, it's getting less and less. But even now, when I watch a stream, I'm bound to fill half a page with little comments like that. So that it really was. It's just one of the questions we've been asked a lot since we launched Cryptmaster is, did we use AI, or what kind of system did we use to get those responses? But there's no AI used. It really is just kind of old-fashioned sort of donkey work. me as a donkey. But I just sat and recorded lots of everything we could think of. But I guess there is a system in place. I liken it to a coin sorter, which is that when you say a word to the game, when you're walking around, you input that word, and the game will check first of all: is this a skill word? Is this a word that has a mechanical effect in the game, like hit or something? If it is, it does the skill. If it's not, no, okay. It looks. Is this a word that's got a specific response for it? But there's a lot like bespoke responses for words. If it is, then okay, then it goes and triggers that specific response. If not, does this word fall into one of these categories? And then we've got a number of things. So is it food? Is it an animal? Is it a profession? Is it a spooky word? Is it an adjective? Is it a verb? We've got big pools like that. Wow. So it detects what kind of word it is. Then it will play it will choose from a pool, and it will play a random null from the Cryptmaster, which is usually associated with that type of word. So if it's a profession, then he'll say, "Oh, are you thinking of a change in career?" or something like that. And also we have the words themselves, because I spent a stupidly long amount of time more or less just sat with a dictionary reading out just lists and lists of words with a sort of questioning inflection. So I'd be like, aardvark, antelope, abacus, like that. And then they can be fitted into the nulls. So he'll be like, doctor, are you thinking of a change in profession? And it's all smoke and mirrors, really. But that's how you get him to play the nulls. And then if it can't detect the word at all, then there's another pool of nulls, which are just like, oh, stop it! You're not making any sense. That sort of thing. So it's been really pleasing and really surprising, actually, to see how well it works. And one of the nicest things about streams is watching people talk to the Cryptmaster, and they just get annoyed with him. They're like, yes, I know. I'm just trying to guess a word. Shut up! I'm trying to do this. And he does feel like more sort of alive almost than I'd anticipated. So I'm quite thankful that worked out.
Yeah. I too fell into the category of like, I know it's not a word. I'm trying to figure out things.
I love that. I love those moments watching people play in streets. There's always one of the things that again, kind of fortuitous really, but I feel worked out the best is the very first interaction with the Cryptmaster when he interrupts the player. I always like watching that on streams, because most players are just not expecting that. He asks them to type in something, and they start typing it in, and then he says, "Actually, I don't care." And it's always a nice moment, because you could see people like visibly. What did he just? I'm supposed to be. I'm the one playing this game, and I was a bit worried at first. I was saying to you earlier, I think before we recorded, I had a moment. I had a couple of days of panic before we launched, thinking nobody's going to find this funny, nobody's going to like this. And one of the things I thought people are going to hate him because he's so rude. Is anybody actually going to get what we're trying to do with that, or are people just going to think this is awful? I don't play a video game to have somebody just make fun of me the whole way through. But thankfully, people got it in the spirit it was intended, and players seem to really enjoy that. I think, if anything, I should have made him ruder to players, because people do seem to like that.
Yeah, he is. I will say, I love the Cryptmaster, and the fact that you are playing, basically bad guys, right? He like resurrected these. You're kind of bad guys.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of a jerk to your characters, right? I love that so much, and inadvertently, I guess maybe advertently, I'm not sure. He's rude to you too, because like you're playing these characters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that so much.
So when he's saying to them, why can't you figure that out? He's also saying to the player, really. But again, it's nice that people have taken that in the spirit is intended. I think what helps that a lot is that the Cryptmaster himself is a buffoon. He's no better. He's no better at all. I think if he'd have been really, really superior and knowledgeable, and he was just poking at you all the time, why can't you figure that out? Then I think he would have been annoying. But actually, he's a big doofus himself. He just doesn't really have a clue. So, and he's sort of pompous. He's pompous and overblown, and he doesn't know most of what he's talking about. So I think that helps a lot. Soften that relationship.
I agree. I think it's funny because I think even like a lot of the characters you run into are all kind of buffoons in their own way, right? Like, and that's what I love about this game, because it doesn't take itself real seriously, right? But it's fun. It is funny, and like I said before we recorded, I don't think I've laughed this hard in a long time at a game because of how funny it is and just how well written it is. It's such a wonderful game. I really love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, that really does mean a lot. It does, yeah, because we weren't sure how people would take it, and it's really satisfying. You know, when you work on something for years like that, and then to see people enjoying it as you hoped people would enjoy it is the nicest feeling.
Yeah. Well, talking about the Cryptmaster, because you did the voice of the Cryptmaster, so it is a fully voiced character and adds a ton of personality to the game. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired the character and the voice of the character? And maybe can you, we talked off camera about, or off air, I guess, about the fact that you weren't going to be the original Cryptmaster as well. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
I was, it was, as I was saying to you before off air, I was, originally I just did it I recorded it as placeholder, but I secretly quite wanted to do the character of the Cryptmaster. So I put a bit more effort than I usually would into the placeholder. And then thankfully Paul took the bait. I remember Paul and he played it with his wife, and he got back and said, actually, we're quite keen on your voice for the Cryptmaster. We should maybe stick with that for now. So I was quite pleased about that. Because I did fancy doing it, but it wasn't the original intention. And what we were thinking was I would use my voice as placeholder, then we'll get a professional voice actor in to do it. But the other important thing that we soon realised was that if I was doing the voice for the Cryptmaster, we could do an awful lot more with him, because otherwise, to have a voice actor in. You have to have a voice actor in, obviously, for a session, maybe a 2-hour session or something. So they record all these lines. In the case of the Cryptmaster, not only is there a huge amount of lines, as I was saying, about just reading the dictionary. I don't know how you could justify, in terms of budget, getting a professional voice actor in just to read words from a dictionary, and also to make it fit and seem as if he is. Because obviously a lot of the sentences are sort of bolted together out of different pieces. So the word and then the null and then the second part of the null. And to make that work, it needed a lot of tweaking, a lot of me playing it and thinking, that bit, that sounds wrong. His null there doesn't match the tone of the other parts. I can just quickly re-record that, which you couldn't do, So if we'd had a voice actor, unless they were physically sat here next to me all the time and I could keep prodding them to do re-records of just odd words and things, it would have made it really difficult. So having me as the writer and co-designer and doing the voice as well was really useful. I don't think we wouldn't have been able to put in place such a sort of reactive system otherwise. So it worked out, I think, quite well in the end. Yeah. But the Cryptmaster, the character of the Cryptmaster himself, I don't really know. I think the voice was something mostly I used to do with my kids a lot around the house. It's just one of those stupid voices that you sort of, I sort of, sort of when I'm reading like bedtime stories and things, I was sort of traumatizing my children with a necromancer bedtime story. But yeah, I think it was, and my inspiration for it, I guess, if like influences, I'm a huge fan of old B movies, but both the American ones or the Universal ones, and Vincent Price and that sort of thing. A lot of people pick up on Vincent Price as an influence, and also the old Hammer horror, Amicus, old British horror movies, and so I love that camp sort of spookiness that was what we were aiming for. We realized very early on, because when we were first starting to make it, when we realized we wanted it to be a dungeon crawler, we wanted it to have this kind of slightly dark vibe to it, but we quickly realized we can't do it seriously, because the whole mechanic of them remembering words and guessing, it's too goofy, it's too funny. You couldn't keep a straight face while all those shenanigans are going on. So it had to be a little bit comic, and that's when I thought the best fit for it would be that kind of very hammy camp spookiness that you associate with old B movies and that sort of thing. So that's when the characters started coming together, I think. And then it just, again, I think because I was recording so many words probably, and it was during lockdown, and I was shut here in this little room just waffling away to myself into the microphone. Because of that, I think the character just grew in complexity. He naturally developed his own personality.
Follow-up question to that then, based on what you just said there. Do you think that this game would have been different if it wasn't for lockdown?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of the early development was sort of during the first lockdown, and I think, I mean, here I always feel bad saying about this because I know it wasn't the case for very many people, but here I had quite a comfortable sort of lockdown. I just moved careers to focusing on video games, which is remote. So I just started working remotely from home anyway. I had the kids at home, but where we live, I'm out in the countryside really. So we didn't have the sort of claustrophobia that a lot of people would have because we can go out and walk around here quite easily. So it was actually quite a nice period for me. Again, I don't like saying that because I know that's not the case for very many people, but and Paul and I were just chatting every day and just working in a little sort of bubble really for the first phase of development. And I think we had a little sort of period of grace in early development where we were able to throw out a lot of ideas. We had probably a good part of a year. As I say, it started with pirates and things. It went through all sorts of odd iterations. We didn't feel too pressured to lock in something too quickly, which was really, really helpful for us in this instance. I think it allowed us to experiment with something a bit more unusual than we would normally maybe feel we could make.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about this game too is the art style. It feels very much, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you both probably played some D&D in your time. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, you're not wide of the mark there. No, you're quite right to say that. Yeah, we're both keen role players, and I very rarely get the chance to nowadays. When I was younger, I used to a lot, but I don't. Most of my friends who were into D&D and I used to do a lot of tabletop war gaming as well. Most of them have moved off the island where I live, so I don't get the chance to do an awful lot nowadays. Paul does more than I do, I think. But yeah, we're both very familiar with D&D, and a lot of, as you've rightly picked up on, a lot of the influences of the art style were old D&D manuals, fighting fantasy game books. I used to be hugely into. They were a big influence. So we wanted the art style. It was an early choice. We said we'd like it to capture some of the mood of, I guess for a sort of, for us, a nostalgic mood, things that we also remembered from our kind of formative years. So things like game books, D&D, old school dungeon crawlers. The influences, most of the influences are quite retro, quite nostalgic, I think.
Yeah. But the thing I love about it too, and I put this in my review, is that it feels like almost like a D&D, but it's homebrew D&D, right? Especially with the art style, because it feels like, not that I was ever the artist like the art that you have, but I mean, I would take pen, right? Black pen, and like draw my little pictures on my notebooks when I was a kid, right? And that's what it feels like to me. It feels very homebrew. It feels very like something that you would put together for your friends. And that's what I love about this art style as well.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's really nice to hear, because we did want it to have some of that sort of feeling to it, that it was, it's like as you say, it's like a D&D campaign that you do for your friends, with kind of just, I wouldn't say winging it exactly. It makes us sound very unprofessional, but but not caring too much about the main thing is that you're having fun and you're trying to.
Yes.
I think that was probably one of the key sort of, to call it a philosophy is probably a bit grand. I don't think we ever thought this is our design philosophy, but one of the things I think we both had in mind while we were making it was that we, above everything else, we wanted it. We just want the player to be having fun. So at each moment you think, is the player going to be enjoying this moment? Are they having fun? Is there something that could be said or done here that would entertain the player in some way? So it is almost like being a DM and coming up with a campaign for your players and thinking, I want funny moments. I want weird things to happen. I just want enough things to be keeping them engaged and make sure they're having fun. So I think, a lot of the development of Cryptmaster was like that. And a lot of it would just be me or Paul thinking of things to amuse the other one, to think, wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be funny if the Cryptmaster said this at this moment? If he led you into doing this and then he told you off for it? That sort of thing. Or for Paul, wouldn't it be funny if one of the chests turned out to be a mimic and it would just jump?
Yes.
It would just jump out.
Yes.
Players. That was a very late addition. That was just almost went without mimics.
Oh yeah, that surprised me, and it surprised me. But then at the moment, I was like, "This shouldn't surprise me." At the same time, right? Like that's what I loved about it, because it felt like, again, very D&D. You have gelatinous cubes. Obviously, you don't call them gelatinous cubes, but you have gelatinous
blocks,
cubes going
glutinous blocks for copyright reasons.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I loved that so much. It was so good, so good.
But the mimics, I think the mimics that's an example of us watching streams, because I think when the demo came out, we were watching people in streams, and quite often people would see a chest and they would approach it a bit warily, and they would be saying, it's a mimic.
Really?
I reckon this is a mimic. And it never was.
Really?
In the game, but we thought, that's interesting that some people are expecting that. So we just thought, well, we should do that. We missed a trick there. We'll put in a mimic now and then.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's cool. That's awesome. Since the release of the Cryptmaster, you've likely received a lot of feedback either from players or critics. Were there any review pieces or I guess feedback from players that surprised you the most?
We've had lots of feedback, sort of right across the spectrum, and we've been making a lot of changes already since release to sort of try and accommodate a lot of it's around difficulty. Again, we've been very thankful that we've had a relatively sort of bug, not free, but it's bug light release. It's gone fairly well in terms of that. But we've been fixing one or two bits. The feedback that has one of the pieces of feedback that has surprised us the most probably is how much people seem to have enjoyed the card game. There's a card game in there. Whatever.
Yes. Whatever. I love that game.
Watching, I've only really got into it. This is a weird thing to admit. I've only really got into it since I've been watching streamers play it, and I've realised, well, it's actually quite good. It's actually quite well balanced. So the credit for that is mostly Paul's. We kind of came up with it together, but he's the one responsible really for all the balancing of whatever, and he's done a great job. It's a really enjoyable little mini game, and it was only intended to be. I think there's the sort of running joke that an RPG. We said, well, if we're going to make an RPG, it should have fishing and cards in it. So we put fishing and cards in just for that reason, really. And we thought it would just be a nice little activity for players to do, a change of pace, but. We saw it originally as being just a fairly throwaway activity, but it worked out really well. Paul ended up building a lot more complexity into it than we'd envisaged at the start, and that's been nice to see players reacting well to that.
Yeah, I really love that game, and in fact, a lot of characters will just come up. Let's want to play a game of whatever because it's so unique and so fun, and it's and beating the Cryptmaster at it is really fun as well.
And he's not too hard. He doesn't like it, but
What has been the most rewarding part of developing Cryptmaster for you?
I think, I have to say I've worked on a lot of different games before, but this has been one of the most rewarding. Just the process of developing it. It's been a really, really fun one to make. It's one of the nice things about a very small team. Paul and I and Sarasha, who did the music, and Katten and Cena and the wonderful people from Akapara who arranged all the voices and so on. We've been a fairly small team, and a lot of the actual design process has just been me and Paul sort of bouncing off each other, and it's been a really fun process. The nice thing about a very small team is that you can do what you want. Frankly, we've just sort of had free reign, and Akapara, the publishers, have been great in sort of trusting us to just go ahead, and once they'd seen the demo and they decided, we want this, they were just, we trust you to go ahead and do it. Tell us what you need when you need it, but otherwise just go for it. So it's been lovely, really, the process of making Cryptmaster. It's just been a lot of fun.
Nice. I have one last question for you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What do you think the Cryptmaster would say about being interviewed on the Gamerheads podcast?
He wouldn't. I don't think he'd be impressed. I don't mean this in a rude way, but he's nothing much impresses him. I think he would just, what, the who, Gamerheads? No, it'll be ridiculous. That sounds awful. I think he'd just be very cutting. I think you'd struggle to get him on here to start with, and then if you did, I think you'd flip a table within a minute. No, I'm going. It's ridiculous. I have to stop him from swearing. Sometimes in my head, sometimes when I do lines the first time, he's quite sweary, the Cryptmaster, and then I have to go back and do a clean edit.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Oh, that is so great. Lee, where I know people can find this game on Steam, because it's on Steam right now. Where can people follow you, and also where can people follow Cryptmaster on social media?
On social media, it's at the Cryptmaster on Twitter. Paul and I are both on Twitter as well. I'm at Williams, WIWYUMS. I don't post much that's very interesting, though, if I'm honest, personally. But
neither do I. So
the Cryptmaster is quite active on social media, though. He read a passage from Twilight the other day to celebrate getting to 400 reviews. And my wife heard me recording it. She said, "Are you recording a passage from Twilight in the Cryptmaster's voice?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Did somebody ask you to do that?" And no. She despairs of me sometimes. She doesn't want to know anymore, really. 5 minutes, just get on with it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. Lee, thank you so much for being on the show. This was such fun, and I really appreciate our chat.
It was lovely talking to you, and thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you come back on whenever you guys come up with new ideas, a new game. You're always welcome to come back on the show. Even the Cryptmaster is welcome to come on the show, even though he may be rude to me. He's always welcome on the show.
Thank you. He'll appreciate that. No, thank you very much. Well, I'd love to.
And listeners, please go check out the game. As I said, you can check out a review on our site at gamerheadspodcast.com. I gave the game an A+ because I absolutely love it. It's on my short list as one of the game of the year for Gamerheads. So go check that out, and then go to Steam, buy the game. It's a fantastic game. With that, everybody stay safe and game on, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.